It's November 1932. Two Australian soldiers are crouched in a wheat field in Western Australia. They have a Lewis machine gun and 10,000 rounds of ammunition. They are about to lose a war. Their enemy? 1,000 flightless birds. This is a story about the Great Emu War. The Royal Australian Artillery deployed soldiers, military weapons, and government vehicles against a wild emu population in the Australian outback, and the birds won. To explain how a developed nation ended up at war with birds, we have to go back to World War I. After the war, the Australian government wanted to reward its veterans. So it handed out free farmland in the remote western part of the country. The land was cheap because nobody else wanted it. It was hot, dry, and 1,000 miles from anywhere useful. But it had decent soil, and the veterans needed work. About 5,000 soldiers took the deal and became wheat farmers. These were not soft men. Many of them had fought at Gallipoli. Some had survived the Western Front. They had spent years in combat against an actual modern army. They knew how to use weapons. They knew how to fight. For a few years, it worked. Then, in 1929, the Great Depression hit. Wheat prices collapsed. The government promised subsidies that never came. Many of the veterans were now broke, miles from anywhere, growing crops they couldn't sell. Then, in 1932, things got worse. About 20,000 emus migrated inland. Here's a quick fact about emus that's going to matter. They are one of the oldest surviving species of bird on the planet. Their ancestors have been on Earth for over 80 million years. They survived the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. They survived the ice ages. They survived everything. They're also extremely well built for the Australian landscape. They're about 6 feet tall. They weigh up to 130 pounds. They can run at 30 miles per hour for long distances. They can swim. They have feathers that look soft, but are actually structured more like hair, which provides some protection. Basically, they are incredibly hard to kill. Modern hunters describe emus as having a kind of bullet sponge quality. Their vital organs are arranged in ways that don't match other birds. Their feathers absorb impact. Wounded emus have been documented running for miles before finally collapsing. Every year, this near-indestructible bird species moves from the coast to the interior to breed. For thousands of years, that route had been empty bush. But in 1932, that route now ran directly through 5,000 wheat farms. The emus found the wheat, and they decided to stay. They didn't just eat the crops, they broke fences and trampled the fields. The holes they made in fences let rabbits in, which ate even more crops. The destruction was, by some farmer estimates, in the millions of dollars. The farmers were watching their livelihoods get eaten by birds. So they did what any group of trained military veterans would do. They wrote to the Minister of Defense and asked him to send the army. The Minister of Defense was a man named Sir George Pierce. When the farmer's request landed on his desk, he reportedly saw it as a good opportunity for the army to practice machine gun use in field conditions. He agreed. The mission was assigned to Major G.P.W. Meredith of the 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery. His full deployment consisted of 2 soldiers, 2 machine guns, 10,000 rounds of ammunition, and 1 transport truck. That was the entire Australian war effort. 2 guys with a truck and a machine gun. Major Meredith was given full operational command. The plan was simple. Track the emus, position the soldiers, open fire. Pierce was so confident in the operation that he sent a Fox movie tone newsreel crew along to film the victory for theaters. The operation was scheduled to begin November 2nd, 1932. The Great Emu War had officially started. On November 2nd, the soldiers were guided by farmers to a location where about 50 emus had been spotted. The farmers attempted to herd the birds into ambush range, but the emus split into small groups and ran in different directions. The soldiers opened fire from outside effective range. They killed a handful of birds. The rest of the flock kept moving. That was day 1. On November 4th, Major Meredith got a better lead. A flock of about 1,000 emus was spotted near a dam. This was the opportunity. The soldiers set up a proper ambush near the water. The gunner waited until the birds were close. Then he opened fire. The Lewis gun jammed after killing 12 birds. The other 988 emus fled. Major Meredith would later report that the birds seemed to have organized themselves into smaller units, with what he described as a leader emu that watched for danger while the others fed. When the gunfire started, the leader would signal the rest and they would scatter in coordinated directions. He was, in his official report, accusing the birds of military tactics. The next few days went similarly. The soldiers mounted a machine gun on the back of the truck and tried to chase the emus across open fields. There were two problems with that plan. Emus run at 30 miles per hour. Australian outback dirt roads in 1932 were not built for 30 miles per hour. The truck couldn't catch the birds. The truck couldn't aim while moving. And at one point, the truck struck an emu, the bird got caught in the steering mechanism, and the truck crashed into a fence. That is documented in the official record. The Fox Movietone crew that had been sent to film the victory was now filming the failure. They captured footage of soldiers chasing birds across fields, missing shots, and reloading jammed weapons. Some of that footage still exists. The press caught wind of it. Headlines started running across Australia. Emus defy bullets. Birds outwit army. Politicians in the Australian House of Representatives openly mocked the deployment. One member of parliament suggested the emus should be given medals for their service. Another proposed the army issue them service ribbons. By November 8th, after 6 days of operations, the official report listed approximately 2,500 rounds of ammunition fired, approximately 50 emus killed. That's 50 rounds per bird. An average World War I infantryman could kill an enemy soldier with 2 or 3 rounds. The Minister of Defense pulled the troops out. Major Meredith returned to base. The emus had won the first round. The story should have ended there. It didn't. The emus came back. The farmers asked for help again, and somehow the government agreed to send Major Meredith back for round 2. This time, the soldiers were smarter. They waited near water sources, conserved ammunition, and only fired when the birds were close. The results improved, but by then the real damage had already been done. The Great Emu War had become international news. Newspapers across Britain and America mocked the operation. The army that had gone to war with birds had become a global punchline. Major Meredith's final report included perhaps the most famous line of the entire conflict. If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. A serving artillery officer had officially compared emus to tanks. And honestly, by that point, it was hard to argue with him. The Great Emu War was over. The army had killed around 1,000 emus. The problem was that there were about 20,000 more. The crops kept getting destroyed. The farmers asked for another military deployment. The government said no. Instead, in 1934, Australia introduced a bounty system. Farmers were paid for every emu they killed. Within 6 months, they had eliminated more than 57,000 birds. Turns out, paying farmers worked a lot better than sending the army. The government also built massive exclusion fences to keep emus out of farmland. Major Meredith returned to normal military service. Sir George Pearce spent years being remembered as the minister who lost a war to birds. Meanwhile, the Emu War became one of the most famous jokes in Australian history. Ironically, the emu is now one of Australia's national symbols. The animal the army couldn't defeat ended up on the country's coat of arms. Not a bad victory lap. To sum it all up, the Great Emu War sounds like satire. It wasn't. Military reports, government records, newsreel footage, every absurd detail is documented. Australia sent soldiers, machine guns, and thousands of rounds of ammunition against wild birds. The birds won. Not because they were smarter, not because they had a plan. They were just being emus. And that's the lesson. Sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't an enemy, it's trying to force nature to follow your plan. The emus kept moving forward. And Australia blinked first. If you enjoyed the video, you might like this one. And subscribe if you think Australia owes the emu population an apology.